So the WNBA draft was 2 nights ago, lads, and the ratings have finally come out for the WNBA draft. And the ESPN finally talked about something, and they made a point that is 100% fact, but it took them an entire year to say this. And also, there can no longer be the attitude of, Caitlyn isn't responsible for the WNBA's growth. Like, Caitlyn isn't a draw, which is an actual attitude that they've made. We're watching for X or Y too. Like, to be fair, maybe for this draft specifically, you can make that argument, to be fair, because Caitlyn wasn't the only person in that draft. But still, the 2024 WNBA draft had the absolute major record numbers. Like a scary, scary amount of numbers. And obviously, look, Elle Duncan said this as a response. So these were the numbers. ESPN delivering the second most viewed draft ever. This is what the peak was, the most viewed TV program, which is good. This is literally a PR. This is a PR post, by the way. Of course, they're not going to have in their PR post, we can be honest here, down 50% on last year. These are our peaks and it's down. They're going to compare everything to 2023. Why? Because we can talk about this point that in life, you always take out the outliers, and there are outliers, and it's why, like, I think it's a little bit disingenuous talking about, like, the average viewership of the league when you include Caitlin Clark games, and then it probably should be taken away, to show the growth of the game in total when it's not Caitlin Clark. But there is a growth there there is growth in the WNBA, as you can see, up 119% on 2023. So Elle Duncan responded with, where is Elle Duncan's response? So where did she respond here? Someone said, I wonder why all the numbers are compared to 2K23, which is obvious because the numbers are down on last year. I can help here. We all know that last year was pretty anomalous with Caitlin Clark being who she is. So to track actual growth, since she isn't ever going to be drafted again or playing college again, we use 2023 metrics to track actual growth and progress. 2023 was record setting as well. What do you mean to track actual growth? Last year's more growth. Growth overall, because we know Caitlin Clark is an outlier. That is a factual statement. This statement right here shuts up all the dumb narrative. There's nothing wrong with what Elle Duncan said, by the way. But I don't want to hear it's not just Caitlin again. And I mean that. I don't want to hear this. That phrase, and I don't think that's a phrase that has come out of Elle Duncan's mouth. But I don't want to hear that from anybody. ESPN, the main partner for the draft, is comparing to 2023. Everything for the Final Fours was being compared to 2023. Everything was. And for the Final Fours, the Elite Eight, and the final of the NCAA tournament. And you can't even say for me too about anyone else, because obviously Caitlin Clark, the person I'm talking about there, was not in the Final Fours where there was the record viewership. So I'm being honest, they compared everything here. And a lot of people are having an issue with what Elle Duncan said. What Elle Duncan said is factually correct. And I actually don't think Elle Duncan has said anything else. But trying to make everyone forget the record-breaking year is not true as growth, but an anomaly that happens once and should be forgotten. Not that it never happened, but this is the biggest problem. They spent all year crediting other people, and then it's very, very clear that it's mostly based on one person, and that's fine. You can give credit to a lot of people for the growth of the WNBA, but the reason for all the crazy inflated numbers, the reason that teams are flying charter right now, is because of 22 from Indiana, and that's fine to say. It doesn't mean that when you play against Indiana, last year Skull Fever fans told us about the adjustment period, how she shouldn't have been on the Olympic team. Now you reduce her impact to an anomaly. She should have been on the Olympic team. Anyone who's we watched the Olympics, Chelsea Gray could not walk. They nearly lost because they didn't have a point guard. And they played against a French team who were way more athletic than the retirement home that was half of that Team USA, and they almost lost. We can be honest here. It was a really bad call, and the call to not bring not only Caitlin Clark, the call to not bring in Ariel Atkins, the call to ironically not bring in Angel Reese, nearly lost them the Olympics. But obviously, so they're not using 2024 because anything with Caitlin, it would show false growth in viewership. I don't know if Caitlin should feel flattered or insulted. since ESPN is trying to erase their legacy because they'll never get those numbers again. It's very different. First of all, it's a PR post. It is a PR post. But they're not trying to erase Caitlin Clark's legacy. They're trying to basically, like, the way I read it into it is Caitlin Clark, the hype of Caitlin Clark, there's no point comparing Caitlin Clark's hype to anyone else because she is an anomaly. She is the face of the league. I don't want to hear one sentence about another person being the face of the league. I don't want to hear one person at ESPN imply that there's another face of this league. I don't want another person to imply that. Caitlin is the damn anomaly. And this is complete, like, I actually don't disagree with a word Elle Duncan has said. I've called her Tim Duncan at least 10 times on this channel. Sorry, sometimes I think faster than I can speak. As you can tell by the facts, a lot of the time I struggle to read. But, yeah, so what record 2023 set if it had an average of 527? Yeah, you don't realize how bad it was before 2023. While 2004 had 601, it's probably on ESPN. It might have been on a different channel. Ella's correct here. It's not fair to compare things to 2024. Problem here is many people, including those on ESPN, have fought against the notion that Caitlin Clark is an anomaly or wrongfully attributed to things outside of hoops. That is a fact. This is the best way I can describe it. There is nothing wrong with what Elle Duncan said. The problem is, and by the way, I actually don't think Elle Duncan is in these people. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong in this. But there are so many people, including that network itself, that have done everything they can to basically say Caitlin Clark's fans are only there for non-basketball reasons, stuff like that. And it's like, why? I'm sorry. Why would a person, because they hate a specific player or because they want to just spread hate? And by the way, there are people that do that. Those people aren't watching basketball. They're not watching the draft. They're Twitter trolls. Twitter trolls aren't actually watching the games. We can be honest here. Like, they're not. So it's literally like, why would a Twitter troll watch the draft, which isn't even basketball, if they just didn't want to see the draft? Like, don't see the issue with the tweet. And this is the thing is, you could just say because of the optics. I actually don't think there's an issue with the tweet. The real answer is this: an ESPN PR page. Their job is to spin a positive narratives. This year's draft did great in context of broader history, but compared to last year, it did worse. So instead of making it a negative, they made it to a positive. Yeah. And then, again, the reason is obviously here, don't see the issue with the tweet. There is actually no issue with what Elle Duncan said. The problem is, again, like, if you actually watch a lot of stuff Elle Duncan said, Elle Duncan's been wrong in a lot of takes, but I don't think Elle Duncan's done anything out of malice. I thought it was dumb, the fact she slightly misquoted Cheryl Swoops and gave a big apology and took back everything she said, instead of apologizing for what she misquoted. And instead of, basically, what she ended up doing was, Cheryl Swoops implied, she didn't say, she definitely implied that Caitlin Clark and Katie Lou Samuelson were of equal importance to the Indiana Fever. And this was like after Caitlin Clark had broke the all-time assist record in a single game. And she said that Cheryl Swoops said Caitlin Clark or Katie Lou was more important, which she did not say. She definitely implied, though, that there was of equal importance. But apologized and took back the whole thing, which, I mean, to be fair, if you're working for ESPN, you probably have to do that. But I think the problem isn't necessarily what Elle Duncan said. The problem is, or this post exactly, the problem is, as has been said, the ESPN spent an entire year trying to minimize the impact of Caitlin Clark, or basically say that the impact of Caitlin Clark is only what it is because of non-basketball reasons. And that is what that network has done for quite a lot of the year. And it's not everyone at that network. It is specific people. It is definitely specific people at the network, because, like, you can't, like, Lobo works for ESPN. I actually don't think Elle Duncan has been bad for any of that stuff. I don't actually think Janae or Andrea Carter have been really bad for that. But there are people at the network. There are people at all the networks that are like, were a huge problem. But I still don't think they're anywhere near as bad as, like, NBC, what they've done, or CBS, like some of the people that they hire. I still stand by it. The best people to cover all this the best person in the media to covering all this probably has been, like, Lobo to an extent, but Robin Lundberg has probably done a good job in terms of the actual media of jumping on this freaking hype train, realistically, from Sports Illustrated. And yeah, and it is cool to see Sports Illustrated having Rosalina Lee going from someone, obviously, who has worked in journalism and is making YouTube content now, working for Sports Illustrated. And, you know, it is good to see, thankfully, a lot of people talking about the league in a positive way growing. And this would have no issue. And by the way, I think it's a really good thing that 2025 is huge, is a big upgrade in 2023. And the fact is that it was only about, it was above 50% of 2024, which is actually a really positive sign. But obviously it's something that people have an issue with, not necessarily because of what Elle Duncan said, because what she said is completely correct, because of some of the stuff that has been said on that network. And obviously, look, and again, like, let's not forget, we had an Around the Horn episode where they said Caitlin Clark was responsible for 0% of the growth of the WNBA. We had another one where another Around the Horn episode on ESPN on that network where they said Caitlin Clark fans aren't basketball fans, all of that stuff. Like, this is stuff that a network has said, not necessarily from Elle Duncan's mouth, but unfortunately, because there's been so many bad things said on ESPN, so a lot of what's said on the network gets, if you work on the network, a lot of what's said on the network by individual people gets attributed to you, and it's not right. It shouldn't be the case, but unfortunately, that is the case when you're in media, and it happens, like, again, just everywhere. Like, you can even see that thing on YouTube media. Like, there's an entire hate thread on Reddit about me apparently saying that Marina Mabry said Angel Reese was the reason why she left the Sky, and I made the argument that no, I literally at the time said that wasn't happening, but because there are plenty of YouTube videos that said that at the time, suddenly I'm the one who gets attributed to it, and it's an unfortunate phenomenon in the media. And realistically, what Elle Duncan said is completely fine, but obviously, no matter what you do, clapping back when it's like a why 2023 in any way, even if it's completely factually correct, is obviously going to have a lot of emotional fans. And the thing is, there's a lot of Caitlin Clark fans, and Caitlin Clark has been covered so poorly by the media that there are a lot of emotional fans that will overreact to certain things. Just like with Ari Chambers, when Caitlin Clark set up her own foundation in college, just randomly saying the WNBA is so important with something that has nothing to do with the WNBA. Like, it's another one of those situations. But anyway, yeah, that's the video. I'll see you guys.